You'll probably fed up of me saying, but on my first night on a months-long holiday in Bali, I had a heart attack. Now, I didn't go to a doctor or a hospital, but it did warrant it. You know, it frightened everyone around me. It's just that I have no faith in anybody in authority since the health crisis. Yes, I still feel bitterly betrayed. So, you know, I've dealt with it myself, but I no longer drink. I no longer, or hardly drink, no longer smoke, no longer eat red meat, and no longer take flights. I might take short flights again, but certainly I'm giving it a rest. So it's had a profound impact on my life. But what really shocked me was when we went to Parkano's, and he said that it was actually a ghost of a Hindu king that had caused my heart attack. It was this possession was so strong it had resulted in me having a heart attack. But more than that, the rheumatic pains I was experiencing, my wife also experienced. And apparently this was because the king had many wives and concubines, some of which had infected my wife. Now, I was really shocked by this because I'm aware of sort of black magic being sent to me from Java and also from Jakarta. And I'd assumed that black magic was being sent to me and it was being picked up on in Bali. But Bapak said no. It was simply that there are so many ghosts around in Bali. And they'd simply picked up on me and infected me and also my wife. Now, this isn't the first time it's happened in Bali. A few years ago, and in fact I think the time before last, maybe even the same Hindu king had infected me, because when I came back for a good 2 months I had uncontrollable asthma, so much so that I had to be locked in the bedroom almost for 2 months. So it certainly happened before, and before that, a few years ago, in the hotel behind the one that we went to this time, certainly they've got these big urns, and from these urns I became infected, and it was because they were using the paranormal to bring monetary luck to them. So it got me thinking about the paranormal in both Bali and Java. Now, I suppose after message boards on social media, including this platform, the least reliable source of information on the beliefs of Java and Bali, or the paranormal activities in Java and Bali, is from those expats who are in Bali. Now, don't get me wrong, some Balinese and indeed some Javanese in Java would share at least an element of what the expats would say. But you know, this could be expats who lived there for many years and they get things so completely wrong. And the line that you will get is that Bali is distinctly different from Java, in as much as Bali is Hindu and Java is Muslim. And that is displayed in the behaviour of the Javanese and the Balinese. Now, to a certain degree, I do agree with it, but it's their understanding of that they've got completely wrong. You see, all Indonesians have an underlying animistic belief system. They have to, all Indonesians have to carry an identity card. And on that identity card, they have to list one of 8 formal or world religions on that ID card. But in general, that's just a way of Indonesians showing that they're like anybody else. It's not really a way of, it's not really their actual, I was going to say religious beliefs. They probably do believe in that as a religion. But underlying that is this animism. All too often, this animism is seen through a veneer of a Majapahit, Shaivistic religion, of Hinduism stroke Buddhism. And people again find this really hard to comprehend, but there is a sort of a tantric path within both Hinduism and Buddhism, and you find it across the East, but particularly in Indonesia, the distinction between Buddhism and Hinduism, because it followed this tantric path, largely disappeared. So that's why you will find the Balinese Hindus very similar beliefs and practices to Buddhists in other parts of Southeast Asia. Whereas this sort of Hindu-Buddhist interpretation of animism is believed to have disappeared from Java, certainly those parts of Indonesia that are Islamic. But in fact, that's far, far from the truth. The spread of Islam, particularly in Java, involved a syncretization with the former animistic Hindu-Buddhist belief system. So therefore, many people's Islam is an Islam that is founded on Hindu and Buddhist beliefs. Very hard to comprehend for most people, that. But it's true. And indeed, Javan, which I am, is a belief system that combines the animistic, the Hindu, the Buddhist, all through the veneer of Islam, which I also am. At its most pernicious, these Westerners will tell you that it's in the Quran, in Al-Quran, that Islam is a religion of violence that was spread by the sword. And nothing could be further from the truth in Indonesia. Although again, you may get some Balinese to agree with such a statement, because there is universal distrust of the Javanese majority across all of Indonesia. Now, I would say there is a difference in the behaviour of the Javanese and the Balinese towards foreigners. And a part of that is simply to do with the Balinese are much more used to having foreigners there and have reaped the best benefits from tourism. Whereas, particularly where I live in Java, there isn't in my Kabupaten, and that's the local government area. I'm the only foreigner living in it. So, I'm a novelty here, and some people are very kind and nice because I'm a novelty, whereas others are very distrustful and quite nasty towards me. And I would say that the other part is, because of their Hindu, the Balinese do tend to be somewhat gentler than the Muslim Javanese. But this is far from universal and far from being that strongly connected to religion. Now, if you remember when I talked about the sort of Shaivistic Majapahit path, the Hindu-Buddhist path, that is very much in evidence in both Bali and Java. There is actually a tantric path, and the dominant, or I believe the dominant path within this tantric path was a left-handed tantric path. It was transgressive. And that transgressiveness, I'm not trying to say is more dominant in Bali than it is in Java, but it's certainly closer to the surface within the average Balinese than the average Javanese. Amongst the Javanese, this left-handed path is most apparent. When you come across Javanese dukun or shaman, but also you will find some ustads, some religious, or well-read religious people using Islamic magic within Java, sometimes from a sort of malicious tantric tradition, although certainly the ustads will suggest that it isn't. You do find this also in Bali. Maybe you're less likely to trip over it in Bali because of, there are many tourists in Bali. You're not a novelty. Whereas in Java, Westerners visiting Java are most likely to experience some sort of black magic attack, even though they might not know that it's happened. And indeed speak to most people in Java, and at least once in their lifetime, they will have come under some form of black magic attack. But what I'm suggesting is that I don't think there's a difference in magnitude between Java and Bali. Now, what I'd like to suggest to you is that whilst there isn't a difference in magnitude in terms of the paranormal between Bali and Java, where there is a big difference is in attitudes towards it between the Balinese and the Javanese. And I think this does reflect the difference between the sort of Hindu-Buddhist traditions and the Islamic traditions. And the Islamic traditions are much more likely to see use of the paranormal negatively and to see possession by a ghost as being something to be avoided. Whereas for the Balinese, it's all about achieving balance. And therefore this is just a fact of life that you need to create some balance around. So for the Balinese, spirits, ghosts, whatever you might want to call them, a very normal part of being on this earth, because it's an earth that we share with the paranormal, with these other things, as it were. Whereas in Java, they tend to be less tolerated. Now, I don't want to make big, hard distinctions here, because that would definitely be wrong. But it is much more accommodating, as it were, in Bali. And I'm sure many of you listening will say, well, that sounds a lot better. But then I'm sure that also some of you may come from a Christian evangelical background. And I'd ask you to think about that. Because you almost certainly would see the paranormal as something that's evil. Now, I don't. But what I would suggest to you is that the Western conceptions of the difference between Bali and Java are so terribly, terribly simplistic and wrong.